Renewable energy is on the rise. A global uptick in clean energy, especially from wind and solar power, is in full swing. But despite that good news, access to clean energy is lacking in other parts of the world. Take, for instance, Africa, where resource abundance and potential are key talking points in discussions on renewable energy. But did you know that 600 million people are still lacking access to electricity on the continent? My name is Austin. I'm with the communications team here at UNU-VIE, and I'm sitting down with Tarisai Kanyepi, who is an expert in green innovation and entrepreneurship, and we are going to talk about why that is in Africa and what it means for clean energy on the continent. So Tari, my first question to you is, what is missing in these discussions on renewable energy on the continent of Africa?
So what is mainly missing within the discourse around this topic is the issue of the fact that although Africa has a large potential when it comes to solar energy, however, we have less than 3% of the global energy investment fund trickling down to the continent. The second also issue is that when we're talking about introducing some of these big projects, whether these are solar parks that we're installing, something that is not necessarily super zoomed in is the fact that what happens beyond the project cycle? What happens once we set up this infrastructure, but who's going to maintain it? And is it possible for us to have thinking or work done around the idea of sustainability for this? And then the last part is also when we're talking about bringing some of the solutions of clean energy, sometimes in that discourse, we're not thinking about who owns this technology, who is benefiting and who's being left out.
Okay. And so to point out what is missing, then what can we do to fill these gaps, or what are ways we can scale up green energy efforts on the continent?
So there are various pathways that the continent should actually be heading towards. So one of them is the issue of investment, which I mentioned. So when we're talking about investment, we need to also consider public investment and also private. And if both can work together within the continent and also external funding coming to the continent. The second thing also is that when we're talking about solutions, is we also need to think about the last mile gap. So there are solutions for example, the rural communities and then the informal communities. Somehow these groups are being left out when we are pulling or pushing some of these solar parks. So there is need to have, for example, thinking around business models that can include them. For example, bundled services whereby you're providing them access to the solar power, but then you also bundle it with other things that they require. Secondly, also having a pay-as-you-go system, which most of those communities could potentially afford. Another angle also is to think about it from the perspective of entrepreneurship. So we're thinking about now bringing on board the young people who understand the context where these solutions are needed. So because at the end of the day, rolling these solutions in terms of the big solar park at a big level, which is mainly done by utilities, is not enough for Africa. We need to also think about these other vulnerable missing groups that we are not bringing into the discussion.
Okay. And I want to kind of go into this point on the entrepreneurship, because I think this is a fascinating thing for the continent. There's millions of young people on the continent, and to get them involved. So what are some ways that you are trying to spur entrepreneurship, green innovation on the continent? I know you're involved with some projects yourself. Do you have any good examples of the work that you guys are doing?
So in our work, one of our main priorities is to try to bring other people on board into this space. So in our case, our focus is on youth and women. So what we have been trying to do, like, for example, one of the recent projects we worked on, which is Renovations, we were supporting youth and women to come up with solutions within their own local context in their countries. So we had about, I would say, around 6 to 8 startups that we supported. And these were working on different types of solutions. So in terms of the support package we gave them was coming from the perspective of a seed grant. So we were giving them a capital to improve their business, whatever need they had, whether it was a particular competency or scaling their market or their solution. We also were providing them training resources, because we believe that it's not enough to just say that someone has an interest in a certain area. Sometimes they need additional skilling to be able to provide solutions, because it's not the same type of solution that is needed per each local area. Some areas need clean cooking, some areas need issues to do with agro-processing. So we needed to be more comprehensive in terms of the support that we were giving these entrepreneurs and these innovators. So one of the things that we've realized is that there is more work that needs to be done because our project was not able to support a large group. We had over 1,000 plus applications, but unfortunately, we were only able to support 30 startups. So this was a clear call that there's more work that needs to be done around this area.
Okay, so it sounds like to kind of get that investment gap filled, they need support in early support, especially around the initial phases of projects. So you were talking about seed grant.
Yes.
Is this something that helps bolster, investment early on?
Definitely. And I would say that also let us not only talk about the seed grant. One other key ingredient which I left out is the idea of fab labs. So fab labs, these are more like labs where young innovators or entrepreneur can go and work on their design. So let's say I'll give you a typical example. You have one who's working on making or coming up with a more efficient, clean cooking stove. So usually the innovator has the idea in their head, but how do we move it from them thinking about the idea and building something that's concrete that you can actually test out? So this is where the Fab Lab comes into place. But however, in Africa, the number of Fab Labs are quite still low. So there's a lot of funding and infrastructure that's still needed to have a scenario whereby at least maybe every single country could have maybe 5 or 10 different Fab Labs. And if we're thinking and approaching it from this perspective, try to now think in terms of the number of how many youth are able to go to these facilities and ideate what is in their head and actually bring it to life.
Yep, exactly. Okay, I guess my last question then for you is, if you wanted to provide some advice to some young entrepreneurs, people who perhaps wanted to get into green innovation, making solutions to help climate action, what advice would you give them?
So my advice to them definitely would be this idea that start from your local context. You know what it is your community, your village or your rural area needs, or could be your urban area. So start from there. If you know that the need in there is a simple farmer who needs to find a place where they can store their produce. So in that case, that means it's a cold storage solution. Then look to that. If it's a different rural household where you know that the challenge there is to have clean cooking stoves, for example, something efficient, then work around there because you have a greater understanding of what is required from your community. And then what I would also say that overall, we need more practical solutions. So we're talking about, rather than the bigger talk, which has been about the discourse of bringing solar parks, let us also push this idea of supporting youth and women with the solutions that they're working on. It's practical, it will create jobs, and at the same time, it will answer the core and the need for each particular local context we're talking about. Whether in agriculture, whether at household level, when you're talking about cooking, or even simple lighting. So this is where almost all the effort needs to be. So I would say the young people need to be aware of their context, and then work from that perspective. And also, if possible, reach out to different enterprise support organizations. Like in our case, we are a research institute, but we work closely with what are called enterprise support organizations. So each community has these networks where if an entrepreneur is interested, they can actually receive the needed understanding and the support to come up with solutions to address their own challenges.
Wow. And this is also for, I'm guessing, rural communities.
Definitely, definitely, because our thinking is that we have youths everywhere. We have youths from the informal communities. We have youth in the rural communities. So just imagine a world where each youth from those communities are coming up with solutions that answer to the core and need of where they are. And if they get additional investment and funding we were talking about, they are able to scale the solutions to a higher group of people who can benefit.
Wow, that sounds quite amazing and a lot of work, and it seems like there are really places that you can actually start to plug these gaps, and that these discussions are often talked about on a macro level, but it's the micro level, it's the practical applications, as you say, for electricity at the home, the rural communities, and then just getting young people involved themselves. So I guess we'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time, Tari. And we look forward to bringing you more science talks in the future. Just click the subscribe button below, and we hope to bring you some more engaging content in the future.